Everybody, take a deep breath, relax. We're going to be talking about on today's show, for one last time, the Aaron Rodgers Minnesota Vikings buzz that is just completely taken off over the last 24 hours because of the latest report from Dianna Russini. What's going on, guys? My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. Now, coming up on today's show, I'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and pretty much be explaining to you guys why I don't think it would be a good decision for the Vikings to sign him and why they need to turn the keys over of the franchise to that guy right there, J.J. McCarthy. But before we dive into it, I want you guys to pick a quarterback for me, and I want you guys to think about this. Who do you think gives the Vikings a better chance to win a Super Bowl in the 2025 season? Just 2025, because I think if I asked you guys 25 for the next 2 years, next 3, 4, 5, everybody would be saying J.J. McCarthy. But just for next season, who gives the Vikings a better chance to win a Super Bowl? Give me a J.J. for J.J. McCarthy, or give me an AR for Aaron Rodgers. I better see a lot of J.J.'s in the live chat right now and in the comments section, because I think this guy's legit, and it's kind of the first point I want to make here. I think it would be a mistake for the Vikings to sign Aaron Rodgers. Now, after all the reports happened, Dianna putting it out there, I always thought this had a very unlikely possibility of happening. But I wanted to go back and I watched every single throw Aaron Rodgers made last season. Every single one. It took me a very long time. But I really wanted to figure out, is Aaron Rodgers cooked? How washed is he? And I'm not saying he is a completely cooked product. I think he has just a little bit left in the tank, maybe one more strong season of playing maybe borderline top 15-ish play at the quarterback position. But when it is all said and done, if the Vikings do decide to turn it over to, let's just say, Aaron Rodgers, and, we get that breaking news, Rodgers is signing with the Minnesota Vikings, whatever that decision is, I would trust Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah that they are making the right move here. Now, would I agree with it? Would I say it's the right move? Absolutely not. I think the right move would just be to turn the keys over to J.J. McCarthy. But also, I just believe this whole Rodgers thing, and I had this typed out. I believe it has a less than 2% chance of happening. I think it has a less than a 0.5% chance of happening. I really just think this was the Vikings in the front office. They probably had one conversation about Aaron Rodgers because – Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi, they're very process-oriented people, and they want to dive into every option that is available, and just knowing who they are and how they go about things, it does not shock me that they at least consider the possibility of signing Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that has any indication of where J.J. McCarthy's at or how they view J.J., because a lot of people are now saying on Twitter and the YouTube comments, like, why are the Vikings even considering signing Aaron Rodgers? Like, what does this mean about J.J. McCarthy? I just think the Vikings are kind of going through the process of figuring out who, really will give them the best kind of chance to succeed next year and for the next 5 years. But Dianna Russini, this is what started it all yesterday. March 12th, she tweeted this out at 3:13 p.m. saying Vikings decision makers are still evaluating their options at quarterback, including the possibility of signing Aaron Rodgers. The four-time MVP is intrigued by the idea of playing in Minnesota. For now, it's a waiting game, sources tell her and Mike Silver. And Mike Silver also tweeted that out a couple days ago, just discussing that, or just reporting that the Vikings are at least discussing the idea of Aaron Rodgers. But that part right there, the four-time MVP is intrigued by the idea of playing in Minnesota. Yeah, it's kind of a no-shit report. Like, I would assume Aaron Rodgers, if he had to pick any place to play next football season, it's probably the Minnesota Vikings, because they have not just the best support system for a young quarterback. I think the Vikings have the best support system for any quarterback. Like, they have an elite top 5 defense. You have a much improved interior offensive line now, and that's going to create one of the better offensive lines in the National Football League. Got 2 great weapons on the outside. Got that solid tight end. Hopefully you'll have 2 running backs that are elite after they draft one. Hopefully in the first round, maybe a guy like Amari and Hampton. But, I would assume Rodgers wants to play in Minnesota. But the one thing I can't get over, and, I don't mean to raise speculation here, but why haven't the Vikings signed a backup quarterback? And maybe this is just them going through the process of just trying to figure out, if they're going to sign Aaron Rodgers, and maybe they're closing in on the idea that absolutely not, we will move in a different direction. But I think it is very interesting that the Vikings haven't signed a backup quarterback, considering we're seeing Josh Dobbs go to the Patriots. We're seeing these other Jacoby Brissett go to the Cardinals. We're starting to see these, I don't want to say high-end backups off the board, but now this is leaving the Vikings in a spot where it's like, all right, Joe Flacco, Gardner Minshew, they're still out there, which are, good backup quarterback options, but also, and I don't know if this is confirmed just yet, but I remember seeing it, that apparently the Vikings offered Darnold a 1-year, $25 million deal. Apparently they offered Daniel Jones a 1-year, I don't know the exact dollar figure, but they offered him a contract. Now, was that most likely to be for a backup quarterback position? 110%. But I also start thinking about J.J. McCarthy with this whole thing. And I'm really curious about this. How would J.J. McCarthy feel about the Vikings signing Aaron Rodgers? Because just even talking to people here in the Chat Sports studios, they're saying, oh, J.J. would be pissed. He would be upset about that being the case. I really disagree with that. I actually don't think J.J. would be, too vocal about him being upset. Now, I'm sure J.J. deep down, if you ask him behind closed doors, would you be upset about Rodgers? I bet you he would be saying, yeah, I'll be upset if they signed any quarterback to be a starter over me because I want to get out there. I want to play for this football team. I'm sure he is still just heartbroken that he was having to miss his whole rookie year, even though, if Darnold still played out the season, J.J. probably wouldn't have played at all, but he still wants to be out there suiting up for this football team. And I am really curious, how would J.J. McCarthy feel about Aaron Rodgers coming in? Because this is a guy, J.J.'s 22 years old. Growing up, especially J.J. growing up in Chicago, he knew Aaron Rodgers very well. He knows how special he was back with the Green Bay Packers. So I don't think J.J. would view it as a slight to him and his game if Kevin O'Connell sat him down and said, hey, man, we're going to go with Aaron Rodgers just for 1 year, and then this is your team. Obviously, if something were to happen to Rodgers, like he would get hurt this year, then he would obviously step in and be the quarterback for this team. But let's just dive into Rodgers here a little more because, I think the whole notion that he is a complete cooked product is a little ludicrous. I don't think he is completely washed up at this point. Now, is he the same guy? Absolutely freaking not. But in the last 9 games, and when I was really watching him play, we saw an improvement in his game. And I think this was a lot of him just getting, honestly, more control of the offense. Like, a lot of this was him calling, most of the plays. Like, honestly, if we got a report out there that Rodgers was calling every single play for the Jets for the last, 2 months of the season, it would not shock me whatsoever. But, again, you see the touchdown-to-interception ratio in the last 9 games. You're like, all right, Rodgers probably still has a lot left in the tank. It's a little misleading. Now, he still made some awesome throws last year. Like, if you go just toss on the highlight tape, for example, Rodgers still has a very aesthetically pleasing game. And I will use this comparison. Aaron Rodgers reminds me, and I know this is comparing 2 completely different sports. And, we can even show the advanced stats here with Rodgers, kind of showing him that he is not the same guy. He doesn't push the ball down the field as much as he did back in the day. Obviously, yards per attempt, 28th in the National Football League. But you know who Rodgers reminds me of? He kind of reminds me of Paul George. NBA superstar back in his day with the Indiana Pacers. Looked like he could have been one of the best basketball players in the league when he was with Indiana, going toe-to-toe with LeBron James and the Miami Heat. But he reminds me of Paul George in the way that both of them have very aesthetically pleasing games. Like, still, Rodgers at 40 years old, when you see him drop back, hit his back foot, and he's throwing off that back foot as we know he will, and he's just kind of flicking the ball out there. It looks very aesthetically pleasing. I think people can kind of get tricked into thinking, oh, it looks good, so it must be good, where I think the same thing happens with Paul George. We see him making all his silky smooth crossovers. He got a super smooth jump shot. It just all looks very, very good. But then we saw Paul George with the Sixers this year. He's terrible. And I wonder if the same thing would happen with Rodgers if, the Vikings really dive into him or really, buy into him, that we could be looking back and being like, man, why did we do that? That was a huge mistake. But, it kind of gets me to this. It all comes down to if Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell view Rodgers as the best option to win at quarterback next season. Like, do they seriously think Aaron Rodgers gives them such a significant jump than J.J. McCarthy would? Because even if they just view it slightly, like Aaron Rodgers just slightly, maybe it gives him that 1% better chance than J.J. McCarthy, I still don't think that's enough. Like, I would need Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi to come out and say, yeah, we think it's night and day the difference we will have offensively with Aaron Rodgers compared to J.J. McCarthy. So it's all going to come down to what Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and how they view Aaron Rodgers, kind of moving forward here in the organization. But let me ask you guys this. Is Aaron Rodgers cooked? Do you believe he is just nowhere near he once was? Do you believe he still has a little bit left in the tank? What say you on this one? Is Aaron Rodgers cooked? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no. You guys let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I kind of am saying yes, but also he's not as cooked as a lot of people think, because people think he's like, not even a top 20 quarterback in the league right now, and I think that's a little ludicrous. I think he's probably in that 15 to 20 range. So I don't have a good answer for you guys on this, but what say you? Is Aaron Rodgers cooked? Y for yes, N for no. Now, I don't want to do this, but coming up here in just a second, I'm going to be making arguments because I think, just covering the Vikings, if I just got on here and I just said, no, the Vikings should not sign Aaron Rodgers, I want to be doing the service and showing you guys, my thought process here on going throughout this whole thing. So I dove into all the plays last night. I watched every throw from Rodgers. I'm going to be making arguments on both sides, why the Vikings should and they shouldn't sign Aaron Rodgers. That'll be coming up here in just a second. But before we do so, I do want to give a massive shout out to today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now, eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and use code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code VikingsChat50off at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Now, if you guys are ready to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. And Factor, it arrives fresh and fully prepared and perfect for any busy or active lifestyle. Now, here, covering the Minnesota Vikings are in free agency and just covering this Aaron Rodgers nonsense, I don't always feel like making a home-cooked meal when I get off work after these long days, and that's where Factor has came in and changed my life. I love their teriyaki chicken, their Louisiana shrimp. They got a ton of different healthy and delicious options. And one more time, just get started at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and use code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code VikingsChat50off at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I got that link for you guys in the comment section and description of today's show, but please check it out. Factor, a great sponsor we have here at Vikings Now by Chat Sports. So click that link in the comment section if you guys want to change your eating habits today. Alrighty, let's talk about this. Let's break this down on both sides. So I got 4 reasons on why the Vikings shouldn't sign Aaron Rodgers, and then I'll give you guys 4 reasons on why they should sign Aaron Rodgers. But let's start off with what I truly believe in, and where I stand is that they shouldn't. And the number one reason, it's the most obvious reason. It's time to start the J.J. McCarthy era. And I hate the argument, honestly, and this is something that even I used to say a couple of months ago, where it's like, oh, the Vikings could just give J.J. McCarthy the Jordan Love treatment. Totally different situations. Because one, Jordan Love wasn't a top 10 pick. He was picked in the mid-20s. And also at the time when they picked Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers was still playing at an MVP, caliber level. And, Sam Darnold, I guess you make an argument he played at that level, but he's not here anymore. And I think you just need to take advantage of J.J. McCarthy on this rookie contract and, get him quality reps here early. Like, there is only one way J.J. McCarthy is going to get better, and that is him playing some high-end quality football, and he can just improve week to week off that. And if you say, like, oh, J.J. McCarthy, he can just improve, still behind the scenes like he was probably doing last year coming off his torn meniscus, I just think the improvement won't be as extreme in comparison to him actually going out there and playing. And also it's not a 1-year window for the Vikings. Like, if the Vikings had a lot of veterans, like let's just say Christian Darrisaw, if he was Trent Williams, and let's just say Justin Jefferson, he was the age of like Devontae Adams, and this was an older roster, and maybe they just had one more year to try to catch lightning in the bottle, then yeah, you would make Aaron Rodgers a great offer, because you would be thinking, oh, this is the 1 year we got, but this isn't. This is a massive window for the Vikings. This is a potentially 15-year window. And I love the Joe Burrow quote where it's like, hey, do you think the Bengals Super Bowl window is closed? And he's like, their window is open as long as I'm the starting quarterback. That's probably how the Vikings view J.J. McCarthy. As long as he is our guy and he is under center, that is our Super Bowl window. And, I think also you just need to trust in Kevin O'Connell and the system. Like, this is the system, and this is the head coach who got career years and career games out of guys like Josh Dobbs. I mean, we even saw Nick Mullins step in at certain spots and look fantastic for this football team. Kirk Cousins had a career year. Sam Darnold obviously had a career year. You have to trust in Kevin O'Connell and the system that they will be able to get the most out of J.J. McCarthy and take this top 10 pick and turn him into a top 5 quarterback. And also, final reason, probably the best reason. If they signed Aaron Rodgers, anything but a Super Bowl win would be a disaster. A disaster. Because at the Vikings, even if you replicated, we'll take the Brett Favre situation, for example. Let's just say the Vikings were a play away from the Super Bowl. And, honestly, if Favre doesn't throw across his body, the Vikings probably have one Super Bowl win in their franchise history. But still, it would be a disaster if the Vikings weren't able to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. I think it would be, and listen, and that's why it's so hard, because if Kevin O'Connell really does view Aaron Rodgers as the guy that gives him the best chance this year, and even if he wholeheartedly believes that, still, if you aren't able to get that Super Bowl win, it was just a waste of a year. Because let's just say I would rather take the Vikings go lose in the wild card weekend with J.J. McCarthy than they lose in the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. You may be saying you're crazy to think that. Everybody would take a Super Bowl appearance over a wild card, weekend appearance. I would rather have J.J. McCarthy go through the learning curves this year instead of just putting it off another year. But let's play devil's advocate. Why should they sign Aaron Rodgers? The best argument I can make is that Rodgers clearly wants the Vikings. I think the reason why all these reports are coming out is because if Aaron Rodgers had to pick where he wanted to play football next season, it would be with the Minnesota Vikings. I wholeheartedly believe that Rodgers views his best chance to go get that Super Bowl win would be with the Vikings. And I'm sure Rodgers would love to play the Packers twice a year. Same way as Favre would love to play the Packers twice a year when they decided to pivot to Rodgers. I'm sure he would want to stick at the Green Bay saying, hey, I was coming off an MVP season. You guys let me, walk out the door, go to the New York Jets. I'm sure he would want to stick it to him. And also this, a lot of conversation, Rodgers would be a cancer to the culture, yada, yada, yada. If you guys still believe, and I think a lot of us do, that the Vikings have the best culture in the National Football League, one player is not going to step in here and change the entire thing. One player is not going to come in here and turn the Vikings into the New York Jets, for example. The Jets were a disaster organization before Rodgers got there. He didn't help them whatsoever. He didn't help improve that culture. But also, you could say he, didn't, or you could say he heard it, and I'll probably, tend to agree with you. But it's not like the Jets had a crystal clear culture where it was like, this is what we're about, and Rodgers came in and completely flipped it on its head. Where I think if he would come to the Vikings, even if it's a disaster, the culture would still be in place. And also this, you would get a motivated Aaron Rodgers. You would get a guy, and I think there's something about all-time great athletes that a lot of us, we can't fully understand because I'm not an all-time great athlete. Everybody watching is not an all-time great athlete where you're on the level of Aaron Rodgers, of Peyton Manning, and he was just cut by the New York Jets. You're telling me this guy doesn't have the biggest chip on his shoulder right now where he was saying, yeah, I went to the New York Jets. They cut me. They're paying $49 million to have me not play on that football team. That has to be just driving Aaron Rodgers mad because he, a very egotistical person, he views himself as, better than the average person out there. And he would probably be extremely, extremely motivated to come here to the Vikings and prove the Packers wrong, prove the New York Jets wrong, that, hey, you shouldn't have let me go. They took a chance on me. Okay, watch this. And my last one. If I was saying why they should sign Aaron Rodgers, I would say he's not washed. Because I think a lot of people think that Rodgers is not even a starting caliber quarterback or he's a bottom 10 starting quarterback in the league. I just disagree with that. He can still spin the ball very, very well. Is he a top 10 quarterback? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You see the touchdown to interception ratio, and you could trick yourself really easily into thinking Rodgers still has it. But I also don't think he is as washed as a lot of people think. So a lot to talk about on today's show. Again, I am still in the camp. I will pound this table that J.J. McCarthy should be the guy. He should be the starting quarterback for the near future. But if you guys, or not only the near future, the whole future is J.J. McCarthy. But if you guys made it to the end, give me a skull down below in the comment section. And also, if you guys want to hit me up on Twitter, that's the handle right there, at Pat Siepman. Give me a follow over there, and I'll give you guys a follow right back. But thank you guys so much for watching today's last edition of Vikings Now, talking about Aaron Rodgers. See you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.